It's been part of the landscape at Bullaroo since 1896, so it's no wonder the people of North Lakes want to know everything when it comes to how, when and what is going to become of Pasminco's former Cockle Creek smelter. 3 development applications currently before Lake Macquarie Council were explained in depth at an information forum held for interested community members. Not surprisingly, local business owners are happy with plans to transform the site for industrial and residential use.
Having the road being completed now, they're in the final stages of it. If we can benefit from the redevelopment to get some of that passing trade through Bullaroo, I think the business community will be very happy.
The Fitzwalter Group is managing the 190-hectare site. Its first major hurdle is waste management. The group says it would be too costly and environmentally unsound to dispose of all the contaminated materials off-site, but is reluctant to elaborate on the idea of building a concrete cell on-site to contain some of the debris.
We're in the process of working with a number of experts around the country and working out the best way to manage this material.
It wasn't that long ago these crews were unable to compete due to a range of issues surrounding safety. It took 3 years to address the problems, and now they're flying high in a new race format once again.
These are simulated rescues, different styles, different types, but each time it's a simulated rescue to rescue somebody in the surf.
Of course, even the best can come unstuck, as the surf proved the real challenge as well today. Staying clear of trouble, Open Men's State champions Caves Beach, who were again impressive in today's round of the New South Wales series at Nobby's Beach. And they look to be the ones to beat for the series, with 1 round remaining. And quite possibly the end of an era today at Maitland, with the final harness race meeting. After some 50 years as a centre for horse trainers and punters alike, the sport's governing body has effectively shut it down as a race venue under its strategic plan. Many past committee members made it back for the day, but the current board still hasn't given up hope they can one day return to racing.
Michael Hagan is one happy man. Today, a lot more subdued than he was last night, though.
You would have thought we'd made the semi-finals or won something.
Alas, no trophy this time, just the sweet taste of success, something the Knights had gone months without.
More of a relief, you know, and the boys let it out there by celebrating pretty hard, but it was good to finally get the monkey off the back.
Andrew Johns philosophising that the recent sponsorship signing had a roll-on effect.
I think it's happy. It's been a tough year for the club and the supporters and all the players, but it feels like it's starting to turn around.
Loyal fans also ecstatic and already talking up the next victory.
It's not before time. I think we've been knocking on the door for a considerable period. And
I'll tell you right now, that wooden spoon's not coming near our city limits.
For the past 40 years, Dr. Paddy Lightfoot has cared for his patients at Charlestown, but his retirement is on hold because he can't find a replacement doctor despite a 2-year advertising campaign.
It has surprised me because it's not very many years ago that when we had a vacancy in the practice we would get half a dozen applicants and just choose the best of the applicants, and now we get no applicants whatsoever.
The fact that it's in one of our most desirable areas, Charlestown, is just an indication of how severe our GP crisis now is.
Dr. Lightfoot says there's a reluctance for younger doctors to stray too far from the major cities or to work the long hours that his generation became accustomed to. And the shortage is hitting hard in the Lower Hunter.
It's a disaster in just about the entire Maitland and broader Maitland area. That is the worst doctored area in our region, and those doctors are really feeling the pressure. And southwest of the lake, anywhere past Toronto.
Case by case are starting to filter to the surface now. Private practices now in trouble with the GP shortage. It's a national issue.
We can expect to see major changes in the Lower Hunter in coming months, including the construction of hundreds of new homes. The state government has approved a rezoning of 101 hectares around the former West Maitland Golf Course for 450 new homes. And there are even more changes on the horizon, with Maitland City Council expected to approve the rezoning of land at Thornton tomorrow night, paving the way for a 92-lot exhibition village worth an estimated $50 million. With a residential boom in the Maitland area, the state government is still looking at ways of easing traffic congestion between Beresfield and Hexham. 15 options for linking the F3 and the Pacific Highway are being considered. The newest option to build a dual carriageway across the Hexham swamp is already causing angst.
They're wetlands. We've got other options where we can go. I mean, we don't have to use our wetlands for rail and road infrastructure.
The road would link Black Hill and Heather Bray, running along the old Richmond Vale railway line and crossing the Hunter River south of the Hexham Bridge. The options will be shortlisted to just 3 before the end of the month, with a final decision expected to be made by the state government before the end of the year. Colleen West, NBN News.
It doesn't take long to realise that these farm animals are a little different. Using the internet, the group discovers that old MacDonald is suffering from depression, and they set about to help him.
It's a real issue that we deal with every day. The kids over the years have become more articulate and literate about mental health, but it's a real issue in their community.
Down on the Farm is one of 6 plays to be staged at the University of Newcastle on Friday night during the grand final of Mind Play. Dealing with rural isolation in towns like Dungog, it's become a school project that may leave a lifelong mark on understanding depression.
We actually had some people in our class that have gone, or know people that have gone through it, and everyone's just benefited so much just by knowing how to help people when they have it.
Our play is aimed at, raising the awareness of this illness so that people will be able to seek the help that they need.
When Phil Trivett decided 2 years ago he wanted to mix it with the pros, even his coach wondered if he had what it takes. He was, after all, recently retired, pushing 60 and playing off a handicap of 12.
We're having a drink and a quiet dinner, and it sort of came up, and I said, well, why not? Give it a go.
Now the handicap's down to just 3. It's thanks to spending 6 days a week on the fairways. The retired Sydney businessman travels to the Newcastle golf course every 3 weeks for 2 days of intensive tuition. Club professional Jason Laws reckons there was no problems with this old dog learning new tricks.
I think the old dog doesn't want to learn. I think with Phil it was open. It was very open in exactly what we had to do.
And what Phil did was create a piece of golfing history.
Shot, Phil. Great shot.
With the 9 strokes carved off his handicap, at 62 he became the oldest player to earn a professional tour card. 6 months on the senior circuit and already he's had a top 10 finish.
It's there, but it's hard work.
It's not often you get somebody that's off 12 handicap that comes to you and really succeeds to be a golf professional in 2 years.
The Australian seniors circuit isn't the richest golf tour. Phil's winnings so far have been small pickings, but this is one touring pro who isn't in it for the money.
I set the goal and I pursued it, and I was determined to achieve it, and I did. And I'm happy.
Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Well, at this stage we'll rest him for the rest of the winter season, and then we'll appraise it after that.
This probably tells the story as well as 1,000 words. For the first time this year, the Knights had something to smile about at Monday training. Young players like Brad Tighe, Trent Sorkeld, Regan Tanner and Daniel Tolar have played a number of matches, but until the weekend they had a big 0 in the first grade win column.
At least I've got a percentage now, 1 from 15, so yeah, just stoked to actually get a win in first grade.
For the younger blokes like me, first win in the NRL, pretty exciting, and yeah, it was like we won a grand final when that whistle went.
Yeah, it was great to be a part of it, and yeah, just a good feeling.
Hopefully we can go on from here and get a string a few more together.
With Penrith accounted for, the next challenge is the Roosters. From the Victoria side, the Knights will be without Origin stars Andrew Johns and Steve Simpson. A shoulder injury could sideline Riley Brown for the rest of the season. Luke Quigley was charged with a high tackle but didn't incur a suspension, and that wasn't the only worry today. The win didn't come without some drama. There were suggestions the Knights fielded 14 players at one stage in the first half, an offence which could have seen them stripped of the precious 2 points. However, the NRL today confirmed that wasn't the case. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
It was one hot Italian day, but the burning question pre-race remained the same. Starting on the front row of the grid, Yamaha's Kevin Curtin appeared one of the few who could. And not far into things, he was riding as high as second. The race throwing up more than Gianluca Nanelli bargained for. Everyone was losing their grip in the searing temperatures, including Kevin Curtin, the veteran Australian forced to simply sit back rather than press for a win. It was a similar story for Brock Parkes, who endured a lonely race before finishing 5th behind his Hunter Valley teammate. The result, though, enough for Curtin to retain outright 3rd on the rider standings. A pair of Frenchmen finishing 1-2, with Sébastien Charpentier beating Fabien Ferret. And a great result for Port Stephens golfer Cherie Burns, who finished tied for 3rd at the Portuguese Ladies Open. Battling windy conditions, Burns carded a 1-over final par round to finish the tournament 2 under, 4 shots behind the winner. The result earning her just shy of $30,000 and a start in the British Open later next month. The Jaegers grabbed the first 2 goals, but it was to be the only time they led for the match. With an all-Australian representative front line banging away up front, the Swifts bounded to a good lead and with little chance of letting it slip. Unbeaten this season, it was easy to see why. Once in control, you thought Sydney was on course to run up a big score, but coach Maria Lynch reacted quickly with some line-up changes and Hunter dug deep. Lara Wellham followed her skipper's lead and reached a milestone as well. While guilty of some wasted opportunities, when Hunter put it together, they showed just how competitive they can be against the league's best. But Sydney aren't the premiers for nothing, and they pulled away for their 12th victory on the trot to equal the league record for successive wins.
Cox's Lane has potholes, no curb and guttering and is barely wide enough for 2 cars. But it's a popular route for the transportation of sand from Burrell's mine just down the road.
It's a laneway. It was never designed for a procession of heavy vehicles, and unfortunately that's what happens on a daily basis here.
Burrell has applied to keep mining in the area for another 2 decades. Locals say they've had enough, calling for the construction of 2 ramps to allow the trucks to travel on Nelson Bay Road and bypass Fullerton Cove altogether.
Apparently, Burrell pays council a fee for every truck that uses this roadway, and that fee is for the maintaining of the roads.
I'll be asking for a report for the head of our engineering staff on how much money is there, over what period it's being collected and how best it can be spent.
A representative from Burrell declined an invitation to attend today's meeting. However, he did say he would meet with locals next week in a more private setting.
If they want to continue mining here, they'll have to put the ramps in.
Meet Maggie, a plasticine nurse working at a sperm bank who's the star of what's being called a claymation mockumentary. 1,500 shots have been meticulously put together, bringing Maggie to life, the brainchild of Central Coast filmmaker and former shootout winner Jason Van Genderen.
The rest of us all sort of said, look, it's just not possible, you can't do it. And sort of bit by bit, I think he started to convince us that it was not only possible, we all started getting quite excited about the idea.
Giving this challenge its edge, crews must complete their short film within a 24-hour period.
Nobody's freaked out yet, so yeah, I think we'll get it finished in time. So,
as far as creativity goes, the spectrum just keeps getting broader.
Mosaic man, he's wants to be normal, but he can't be, obviously, because he had a birth defect. And yeah, he's naturally mosaic around his, middle area.
Hence the bubble wrap, of course. For this crew, working with animals wasn't the problem. And again, there's that blue couch.
Part of the festival is you were given 10 things that we have to use 5 of in the film, in one of our films. So I think we're on number 3, but this couch is travelling around Newcastle and we've got time frames there you can catch up with the lounge and get in your shot.
Then there's the current affairs style entry. Whether it's enough training and experience to win this competition will be revealed later tonight. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
No matter what the weather conditions, Hamilton was always in for a cool reception at Broadmeadow's home ground. But at least they got one. Broadmeadow quick to tune in on goal with a reflex shot of John Bennis good enough to warrant a second look. Not quite a replay, but another corner and another goal. This time, though, it was defender David Bailey heading home. Peter Haynes was only centimetres away from making it 3 before the break. Only a few minutes into the second half, and David Ryan did. And Broadmeadow looked all but home. Olympic down, but not out. A corner finding Luke Lawless, who tapped in and breathed life into a fight back. When Trent Austin buried a bomb from much further out, hearts were pounding on both sides as his screamer cut the margin back to 1. Keeper Ben Kennedy had nowhere to hide when Corey Flipsovic grabbed Hamilton's third, and the game continued to turn Olympics' way. But the match winner came from former Hamilton star Ben Lane, who came off the bench to answer his coach's prayers. His finish making for one magic day.
Have a look at why that dog has bitten somebody and where that dog came from and what the owners are doing.
Okay, Josh, well, you've agreed to stay for another 2 years. How does it feel?
Yeah, I'm very, very excited. The last couple of weeks have been pretty tough. Not playing and having that on my mind. But now it's all said and done, and just really excited for the next 2 years.
Was there any one thing that helped you make the decision in the end?
Yeah, I think just being back out there and the crowd and just playing with the boys. I think mostly, and I was just probably thinking after the game, how can I leave all this? Even though we're not going as great as we probably should be, but. Yeah, it was just a good day, and then had a meeting with a couple of senior players, Joey and Bedsy and Matt Gidds, and we had a good chat, and it's we've got some exciting times ahead.
Yeah, you came close to leaving. How close?
Yeah, mate. If you asked me, Thursday, Friday last year, I was all but gone, but I'm just really excited to be able to stay at home and wear the red and blue for another couple of seasons at least. But looking in the future, I'm probably got the best years ahead of me, and hopefully I can give them to Newcastle.
Your overriding emotion tonight, relief, joy?
Yeah, I'm excited now. I think just to get all that out of the road and go and hopefully play some good footy and play to what I can play.
Months of consultation between management, staff and unions, and today a sense of finality with the University of Newcastle Council adopting plans to cut 250 general and 162 academic positions.
The proposals are very explicit in terms of the positions that need to be lost from the organisation, and we will now be taking that decision taken by Council, taking it to the staff and talking with individual staff.
Professor Saunders says the number of jobs being axed is about 40 less than originally predicted. 28 positions will go from the Ourimbah campus. 165 voluntary separation packages have already been approved, with around 80 still to be negotiated. Professor Saunders says not everyone who wants a redundancy will receive one, with only certain positions earmarked. Meanwhile, general staff are calling for greater involvement.
We're against job cuts, but if they have to be cut, let's do it properly.
The majority of cuts are expected to be made within 12 months, with a handful of employees on contracts finishing in 2007.
It's important for people to realise that they have an opportunity to present a case as to why their position should not be lost.
Having signed with the new Gold Coast franchise from 2007, Brian Carney is keen to play at least one season with Andrew Johns and Danny Badiris. And overnight, his English club Wigan granted the rep winger's wish by releasing him from the final year of his contract.
I guess it's a bit of a stopover for him between now and when he joins the Gold Coast, but I mean, we're happy for him to come here for next year.
What a way for some of the current group to prepare for the Sharks. And for players like Steve Simpson and Kurt Gidley, it's where they'll spend much of the week in a bid to be fit for the weekend. Simpson named to play but not expected to run until at least Friday after injuring his knee in Origin 3.
It's feeling better and better every day, like the swelling's sort of going down and there's still a little bit there.
Kurt Gidley, meanwhile, wasn't named, but he'll still be given the week to recover and replace rising star Jared Mullen, who has Australian schoolboy commitments approaching.
However, if Kurt's not right, you'll play with us Saturday night and do your best after that, pal.
The tension was palpable. A room of ratepayers and councillors split over whether the sale of public space for commercial development should be supported. Those categorically opposed to the loss of Ferris Oval were represented by Charlestown resident Les Powell, who spoke of shopping centre owners' reluctance to consider any alternative sites for the relocation of the bowling club. Then owner GPT's response. The ensuing vote was identical to that of 2 weeks ago. 7 councillors for the sale, 6 against, including Mercia Buck, who was still fuming today.
I'm angry with the GPT Lend-Lease because it's really disgraceful that the method that they've used to get their way is to pit groups in the community against each other.
Mayor Greg Piper says the public needs to understand this isn't a green light for the developers.
It wasn't about selling Ferris Oval, it was about looking at the possibilities and allowing further consultation.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
The instructors from Sydney's National Driver Education Centre hammered home the basic message from the start. It takes your car this far to stop at 35 kilometres an hour, double the speed to 70, and you need a lot more road to pull up.
But 60 k's will take every vehicle at least 20 metres to stop. It's a matter of physics, it just can't be changed.
Then it was up to these young drivers to have a go. All have just recently earned their P plates, and most were blissfully unaware of their car's ability to stop.
Really big shock actually, like I fully had no idea about the amount of time and the amount of distance that can differ in like 5Ks.
Yeah, I was surprised, so maybe I'll keep a bigger distance from now on.
At $185 per person, the course isn't cheap, but according to instructors, the skills will help save lives.
They have enough to learn to get their licence in the first place, and it usually takes a little while for these people, they've been on their P plates for a little while, to understand and to realise that there is more to know about driving than what they've actually found out so far.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
For the first time, they've got a system of mapping their business, which we think is probably one of the most powerful tools that comes with this.
It was a tragic end to a night out. Zane McCready left bleeding on the pavement and calling out for an ambulance after having his throat cut. He died soon after in hospital. It came after a violent clash involving a group of around a dozen men who allegedly surrounded the victim and his mate as they walked along Hanbury Street. In police facts tendered to the court, it's claimed that Zane McCready's friend pulled 2 shot glasses from his pockets and held them in his hands, saying he didn't want any trouble. But police allege a 16-year-old boy swung at the victim, inflicting the fatal wound. Today, the teenager entered a not guilty plea in Toronto Children's Court. His solicitor said the boy, a school student, has no previous record and comes from a supportive family. But the prosecution opposed bail, claiming you don't get much more serious a crime than this. The prosecution case is likely to take time to finalise, involving some 30 witnesses, 20 civilian and 10 police. The boy will next face court early next month. Natasha Bayersdorf, NBN News.
Given the circumstances at half-time, it's no stretch to label yesterday's win one of the club's best at home. Everyone was on thin ice, though, at the break, with a stinging spray from coach Michael Hagan.
Probably thought it was our worst first half of football I've seen for a long time.
His rev-up, though, then inspired one of the best. Down 18-4 and running into a gale, Newcastle saved the margin from blowing out before reining in the Cowboys. It all contributed to that last try, which looked anything but textbook. Something the scorer must hit again soon.
I've got to pinch myself, you just remember how young he is.
The skipper counting his own blessings after a month to remember. But everyone had their own reason to celebrate, including Regan Tanner, who's played every game for Newcastle this season.
These last 2 wins, I've certainly savoured the moment. Feel things turning, we're getting players back. Steve Simpson will be back, the 2 Gidsies will be back soon, so I think we're going to finish really strong.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Most surfers just couldn't bring themselves to paddle out in today's big swells, but others couldn't resist the lure of riding a 2 to 4 metre wave that's up to about 8 feet on the old scale. These days, big wave riding is all about towing in behind a jet ski, and there's a hardcore following in Newcastle. As the swell and wind reached a crescendo overnight, houses at Shortland Esplanade became absolute beachfront, the owners having to hose the sand out of their garages. The cold wind didn't deter morning walkers who had a more spectacular ocean view than normal, and off the port, 17 ships weighed anchor and headed for deeper water to ride out the swell. It was rock and roll for those that chose to stay. At Stockton, where beach erosion is a major problem, a group of volunteers spent the day working on long-term stabilisation of the sand dunes. Funded by the Newcastle Port Corporation, they're removing large areas of bitu bush and encouraging native grasses to grow on the dunes. The noxious bitu plant arrived in Newcastle from South Africa in the early 1900s in ballast from sailing ships and has now colonised most of our coastline. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
The Jets arrived at the training home of the Wallabies late today and got straight to work. To play fellow A-League side Adelaide tomorrow night and Brisbane on Saturday, this trip is no holiday. It's a big one too for Alan Picken, who's trialling for a contract with the club. While Uruguayan Mateo Corbo has agreed to a one-year deal, it's flying him in and up to the side in Coffs that remains the challenge.
He was waitlisted for yesterday. That would mean that he would arrive Tuesday, being tomorrow. I need to get that confirmed. If that's the case, we'll get him up to Coffs Harbour post-haste.
Softball and Newcastle's Natalie Ward has won both the Most Valuable Player and Best Defensive Player awards in Australia's incredible 3-0 win over Olympic gold medalists America to win the famed Canada Cup. The Aussies recovering from a 10-2 loss in the semis to beat their old rivals in the decider. In Premier League hockey, wins for Tigers, North, Maitland and West. And the Northern New South Wales under-16 girls side has won the national championship.
He's whining now, but prior to today, it'd be even longer till this homesick pup was reunited with his family. Microchipped, but name unknown, he's one of the first to be taken into the Newcastle Animal Management Centre at Tyes Hill. It's where Newcastle Rangers take wandering dogs, holding them for 24 hours before transporting them to the new Rutherford shelter.
Previously we were simply using the RSPCA facility at Ellamorvale. Since they've moved to Rutherford, we saw a need to have a facility in the Newcastle area so that people could still pick up their dogs locally without the trip to Rutherford.
The idea is to keep the animals in a location accessible for people living in Newcastle, so the RSPCA shelter doesn't become overcrowded and dogs can get home quicker.
It's cheaper to pick up the dogs from Tyes Hill than from Rutherford, so there's further incentive there to get your dog out of the impound facility as soon as possible.
The Animal Management Centre can also hold smaller animals indoors at the veterinary clinic. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
It was a foul day at the beach, but that didn't deter these young bodyboarders. After paddling out into the rough surf, they quickly found themselves in trouble, just metres away from being pounded on the rocks. A raised arm signalled their plight to surf lifesavers, who told them to paddle out to sea. Then it was up to the crews of both Westpac rescue helicopters to pluck them to safety. Crewmen were lowered into the water, the bodyboards were discarded, and one by one the boys were saved. Dropped at a nearby park, the trio was treated for exposure. 17-year-old boys Wade Masters and Toby Parker and 13-year-old Matt Doyle, all grateful to have been rescued.
Started from First Creek down there and just got swept all the way up past the cliff and didn't want to catch a wave in because you would have got smashed on the rocks, so just had to paddle.
And the drag got swept and we were stuck in the one spot and there was nothing we could do.
The rescue operation cost several $1,000s, with authorities warning people against taking unnecessary risks, especially during the school holidays. For now, though, these three have to face the wrath of Wade's mother.
What in the hell do you think you boys were doing?
Surfing.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Shootout is renowned for producing unique films.
Well, it's a tad embarrassing, I suppose.
and this year was no exception.
But hey, I'm just happy to go with the flow.
The filmmakers behind the winning entry call their craft a claymation mockumentary based on a fictional Newcastle sperm bank. The characters and scenery were made entirely from plasticine and were filmed frame by frame over a 24-hour period, creating 1,500 shots all up. Director Jason Van Genderen, a previous shootout winner, says the contest is raising the bar for filmmaking.
Where else can you engage in something like that anywhere in the world? Like, to be able to put all these filmmakers together for one weekend and just see what you can churn out in 24 hours.
At the time, coach Adrian Hurley agreed to play the Hawks. It seemed like a good idea. However, it'll be a depleted squad that runs out to greet last year's runners-up in Sydney on Thursday night.
I think the big thing which has affected us has just been the late call-up of Russell and Brad to the Australian team, and then of course the late arrival of Odell and Mike, our two Americans.
With Brendan Mann and new recruit Jason Everstein also unavailable, it'll be a trial in every sense of the word. The coach, though, keen to have his imports in camp in the next 5 to 6 days.
I'd like to have them here for all of next week because the week after that we go to New Zealand, so we haven't got a lot of time.
Meanwhile, the club's previous owners have issued a statement declaring they've completed outstanding player payments from last season and will soon round out superannuation issues that came to a head late last week. Having signed with the new Gold Coast franchise from 2007, Brian Carney is keen to play at least one season with Andrew Johns and Danny Badiris. And overnight, his English club Wigan granted the rep winger's wish by releasing him from the final year of his contract.
I guess it's a bit of a stopover for him between now and when he joins the Gold Coast, but I mean, we're happy for him to come here for next year.
What a way for some of the current group to prepare for the Sharks. And for players like Steve Simpson and Kurt Gidley, it's where they'll spend much of the week in a bid to be fit for the weekend. Simpson named to play but not expected to run until at least Friday after injuring his knee in Origin 3.
It's feeling better and better every day, like the swelling's sort of going down and there's still a little bit there.
Kurt Gidley, meanwhile, wasn't named, but he'll still be given the week to recover and replace rising star Jared Mullen, who has Australian schoolboy commitments approaching.
However, if Kurt's not right, you'll play with us Saturday night and do your best after that, pal.
Forward Josh Perry has been named to start in his second game back from suspension, but still no word yet on his future past this season, after holding further discussions with the club overnight.
We're moving in the right direction, I think, but there's still a bit of work to be done.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
At the time coach Adrian Hurley agreed to play the Hawks, it seemed like a good idea. However, it'll be a depleted squad that runs out to greet last year's runners-up in Sydney tomorrow night.
I think the big thing which has affected us has just been the late call-up of Russell and Brad to the Australian team, and then of course the late arrival of Odell and Mike, our two Americans.
With Brendan Mann and recruit Jason Everstein also unavailable, it'll be a trial in every sense of the word. The coach, though, is keen to have his imports within the camp in the next 4 to 5 days.
I'd like to have them here for all of next week because the week after that we go to New Zealand, so we haven't got a lot of time.
It opens plenty of doors for the younger players, though, to show their wares early on. This time last year, Larry Davidson and Mitch Selwood were preparing to make their NBL debut. Fast forward 12 months and they'll take a more senior role tomorrow night.
Yeah, we'll probably be playing a lot more than usual, so hopefully we don't get fouled off too quick.
In other Pirates news, the club's previous owners have issued a statement declaring they've completed outstanding player payments from last season and will resolve superannuation issues that came to a head late last week.
People will have a very balanced and objective tool with which to lobby government at all levels.
A perfect backdrop for a perfect wave, friendly locals too. Maybe it was the serene location, but boy was Joel Parkinson looking comfortable. The Gold Coast surfer making impossible sections with effortless ease. You wondered what was going through his head as he posted a whopping 9.57 on his opening wave.
I felt relaxed and felt like I was almost free surfing, you know.
The wonder boy in the white wetsuit, Kelly Slater, was another to relish the fast down-the-line surf break of J Bay.
Most guys are kind of getting stuck in the pocket and, you know, don't tell anyone, but that's a little secret. Get out in the face a little bit and do your thing, you know.
While Bruce Irons' big aerials couldn't match Slater's style, his older brother Andy found form inside the wave. The Gold Coast's Mick Fanning showed no signs of that hamstring injury that troubled him last year, easily advancing to round 3. But a few fellow Aussies, including Trent Munro from Scott's Head and World Tour veteran Mark Okolupo, will face sudden death in round 2, which will be contested tomorrow if the solid conditions continue. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Tillagary Creek takes up only 2% of the entire Port Stephens waterway, but accounts for around a third of all oysters grown commercially in the port. Recent testing has found that eating oysters from the creek could make some people sick.
We're talking about human waste, we're talking about animal waste as well. That's finding its way into a number of tributaries that go into Tillagary Creek. That's then being accumulated in some of the oysters within that area.
We've closed ourselves down, and the Food Authority has come behind and reinforced that in the interest of public safety.
Alarming was the discovery of a human stomach virus in the oyster meat. But more concerning is the cause. Years of urban and rural growth and the lack of a proper sewerage system has seen the land reach saturation point. Combine leaking septic tanks with a high water table and the runoff is poisoning the creek.
Devastating on some farmers. There's probably 14, 15 farmers. That's really devastating their business. They've got all their product locked up in that area. I say locked up because they can't market it.
The family-run Shepherd's Oysters has given notice to 2 workers already. Many growers will now be pushed towards financial ruin until the problem can be solved.
We've got to get some sort of sewage system or piping of the effluent away. This is not just for oysters, it's the health of the environment. We're simply only the canary in the mine.
The growers want to stress that no oysters from the affected area are being sold and that all other Port Stephens oysters are safe to eat. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
It could be 5 years or more before any development takes place on this parcel of land, which straddles the Cessnock and Singleton Shires. Today, the long and potentially controversial process of deciding what to do with it began. School principals, government representatives and community groups among those invited to offer suggestions.
We want to see where the process goes and what evolves in collaboration with the community.
That's the big challenge here, is to get it right, not to go and foist something on the community. Make sure we plan it properly, get it right. We've got a blueprint for the future.
The land which surrounds the village of North Rothbury has been earmarked as a potential location for a self-sufficient town that could house up to 50,000 people. It will be at least 6 months before a development concept is finalised for the Sweetwater site, which is currently zoned rural and rural residential. Environmental groups have slammed the consultation process, saying they haven't been invited to take part in the 10-day invitation-only gathering, which kicked off this morning. They claim the 2,000-hectare site being looked at is environmentally sensitive, housing endangered plant and animal species.
If you were looking for the worst site to situate a proposed town of 50,000 people, that would be one of the sites you would look at.
The issues of environment will be dealt with.
Colleen West, NBN News.
The Wallabies and Bulldogs call Coffs Harbour home in pre-season, and now so do the Jets. Given a warm welcome by the city's soccer faithful, it was Adelaide who looked the cooler outfit early. A stalemate developed but was broken in the 40th minute when Jets striker Franco Parisi landed this goal. The Jets continued to tease Adelaide in the second, but they stood up to every challenge. That was until 15 minutes from full time when Jets midfielder Matt Thompson sent one through, giving Newcastle a 2-0 win and passing yet another test. Another trial beckons, this time with Queensland on Saturday night. Still on soccer, and former Newcastle United captain Matt Bingley is taking legal action against his old club following claims he hasn't been paid accordingly for services in the 2002-2003 NSL season. Bingley's Newcastle-based solicitor says $13,000 in match incentives are owing. The club's current administration says it's inherited the case and is determined to see it settled, with the matter now in the hands of the Jets legal team. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
The Ent was swarming, with mums, dads, kids, teenagers, all filing through the rows of colourful fiberglass, shiny chrome and bone-shaking audio-visual displays. Organisers knew there was a solid custom car scene in the city, but they weren't expecting such a phenomenal showing at their inaugural Newcastle event.
We anticipated a really good response, but we're actually, as you can see, blown away by the whole Newcastle experience.
For locals taking part in the national competition, it was a lot more convenient than travelling to one or more of the capital cities. But what they appreciated more than anything else was the chance to have their vehicles on a stage.
There is a lot of cars going around now and money being spent on cars, so it's a good opportunity for everyone to show off their cars.
It's taken 21-year-old Sean Fenner from Shortland 2.5 years to get his Holden wagon to look like this, but the attention it got today made it all worthwhile.
That's why I built it, so people can ask about it and everything like that.
And while many of these beauties are purely show cars, the number of entrants, the attention to detail, the jaw-dropping excess they all exhibit shows the custom car industry is more than healthy. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Dropping in before kick-off, the chopper was never going to dry out this pitch. Jim Kresnar was eking out every minute of Father's Day. But some thought he should have been elsewhere altogether. Scott Thomas probably thought he was after he came under some friendly fire. The first half wasn't one without its chances. It was desperation stuff at both ends in a scoreless first 45. South Cardiff came out with all guns blazing after the break, but could only brush the target. The radar just off for Josh Piddington's right foot rocket as well. Jared Johnson closer, but still no cigar. It was edge of the seat sort of stuff as the clock ticked down, and after 90 minutes neither could break through. Incredibly, it took just 2 minutes of extra time for Broadmeadow to score, but this wasn't golden goal, and South Cardiff's Ryan Clark buried an equaliser soon after. Into the second period of extra time, a heartbreaking way to finish for the Gunners. An own goal sinking South Cardiff, but for Broadmeadow the finish was just magic.